Welcome to the podcast An Ancient Language for a Modern Soul, Poemi Conviviali by Giovanni Pascoli. In today's episode, we delve into The Last Voyage, a long and hauntingly beautiful poem that reimagines Odysseus, or Ulysses as he is also known, final journey. Unlike the well-known tale of Odysseus' return to Ithaca, this poem portrays an aged Odysseus setting out once more for a final and fateful voyage. With its 24 cantos, The Last Voyage is the longest poem in the Poemi Conviviali collection. And in this episode, we'll hear Canto 1 to 14. I'm honored to be joined today by Francesca Schironi, who is Professor of Classical Studies at the University of Michigan. Her research spans Greek science, Hellenistic scholarship, and papyrology, and she's the author of a monograph on Aristarchus of Samothrace. She has also written on the motif of Ulysses' last voyage in late 19th and early 20th century literature. You will listen to this part of the poem in various translations. Canto 1-4 are taken from the translation by Robert Nugent and Egidio Lunardi, published in 1979. Canto 5 has been translated by Jeffrey Brock as part of his 2019 collection of Pascoli poems called Last Dream. And Canto 6 to 14 have been translated by James Ackers and myself in the book Convivial Poems, published by Italica Press in 2022. The poem is read by David Carter. The music is by Mark Harmer at the Celtic Harp. So welcome, Francesca, and thank you very much for being here.
Thank you very much for inviting me to join you and your wonderful project. I think it's a great project. It's a great website. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Francesca. That's lovely to hear. So Pascoli returns, so to speak, to the character of Odysseus or Ulysses in several poems. The Sleep of Odysseus, which listeners can find in episode 5 of this podcast, The Last Voyage, as well as in Il Ritorno, the Return, another poem from another collection called Odes and Hymns. While The Sleep of Odysseus recounts one of Odysseus' perilous moments on the way home from Troy, The Last Voyage portrays him in his old age after years of peace in Ithaca, surrounded by family. In the opening cantos, we see Odysseus wandering with an oar slung over his shoulder, seeking someone who has never seen the sea, so someone who would mistake the oar for a farming tool. This image echoes the prophecy given by Tiresias in Book 11 of the Odyssey, that Odysseus will find peace only when he reaches such a place where people don't know the sea. So Tiresias also foretells Odysseus' death from the sea, quite literally. And so this is, to use a modern word, a spin-off of the Odyssey.
Yes, it is, in the sense that even in the original Odyssey, there is this sense that there is something beyond his homecoming. Odysseus will be on a journey again. But there is a big difference. Tiresias prophesizes this journey in the underworld, and is clearly an inland journey because he has to find people who don't know the sea. So Odysseus will not be at sea, it will be inland, and we don't know where because Ithaca is a small island. And after that, he will have this, that is that in Greek is from the sea, ex alos. If you read later on in Book 23, Odysseus will retell this prophet's wife, Penelope. In fact, this is not the only possibility, because we know that in antiquity, myth has many variations. Even in antiquity, we may be more familiar with one version of the story, but there are many others. And for Odysseus, there were others, one of which was the story that was contained in another poem called Telegony. Telegony is part of the cyclic poems, the poems that were written around the same time, or written or composed, whichever theory you want to embrace, around the time of the Iliad and the Odyssey or before them, telling different stories. The telegony is about telegonos. Telegonos is the son that Odysseus has with Circe. And so we don't have the poem, we have summaries. But the idea is that Odysseus first leaves Ithaca and go to Thesprotia. Thesprotia is a region in northern Greece. There he marries and begets a child. Then he leaves and goes back to Ithaca. And where he's there and he's old, there's another child, Telegonos, who is the one he got from Circe, who tries to find his father and goes to Ithaca and kills Odysseus by mistake. And this is the death from the sea, in fact. It's not away from the sea. So there was another way to interpret this from the sea. Some scholars even now think that actually the hint is this other myth where death from Ulysses arrives from the sea. So already in antiquity, this from the sea is very ambiguous and there are different variations. So what Pascoli does is to, add an additional version, which of course is not only born from Homer and the Greeks. It has this, the fundamental step, which is Dante Inferno 26, without which you would not have the last voyage, probably.
That's very interesting. Thank you. And we agree that this Odysseus in the last voyage is definitely not Dante's Ulysses or Odysseus, because this character is driven by a desire to go beyond the limits of human knowledge, whereas in the last voyage, Odysseus just wants to relive his youth. So it's quite the opposite.
Yes. Exactly. Yeah, there is this sense. I think that the trait d'union, the fil rouge, is still this desire of knowing something, but it's a different type of knowing. For Dante, is knowing forward and discover what is unknown. This old Ulysses in Pascoli is wants to know if what he remembers is true. So it's the testing of his own memories, of his own self, because fundamentally this is the point, at the end, he will ask the sirens, tell me who I am. So it's this idea is, going back to a past, because I am what my past is, what my deeds are, and fundamentally discover that these deeds are not there.
So interesting, yes. And so, yes, in my own reading and my life as a scholar, I actually try to read the Conviviali collection as poems about relentless and impossible desire, because so powerful Odysseus' desire is that he actually manages to convince his companions to join him on the voyage. And the companions are old men like him, but also, are they even alive? Because if I remember correctly, in the Odyssey, they die in the voyage. So we sort of see that the poem operates in a context that it's maybe reality or even a blurred memory, perhaps, or even an old man's dream.
Absolutely. Now, this is the idea. It's, in a sense, Pascal is already telling, I'm not following Homer because I'm bringing these companions alive back on stage, when we know they all died. In fact, there has been scholars who have interpreted this poem as actually just a dream. This is all a dream that Odysseus has dreamt while sleeping next to Penelope, as an old couple. So there is definitely this, is this true? Whether it's true or not, I think is still, the meaning is still the same, is still, as you were saying, this impossible desire, the desire of going back to a past that you cannot revive.
Exactly.
That perhaps never really existed.
Yes. So the first part of this poem is very long. So I'd like to leave some time to the listener to enjoy the story, and we see each other again for the second part of the episode. So thank you very much, Francesca, for introducing the first part of The Last Voyage.
Thank you for having me.
The Last Voyage. 1. The Swingle. And so the hero of the seas hung up the rudder in Ithaca, next his hearth. He had returned worn out from roaming the lands that tired his heels, as he held an oar across his immense shoulder. He had sought the men who had never heard of seas nor ships black with red prows, the men who eat their meat without salt. And many moons had already burned out amidst rough cliffs, moons that searched in vain the pale blue sea in which to dip their light. The sky now, for a long time, it smelled not odour of salt, but odour of green. And then he met another wayfarer who addressed him, and the night wind howled and tossed on the mountains about them, like a bear fallen deep into a hole. "Stranger, do you go to the king's? Oh, late you come. In the granary the king's grain is husked already. A god sent this breeze still blowing that earlier swept off the chaff. Your swingle, labourer, is useless now." Thus he spoke. The hero's heart, far-sighted, was filled with smiles as he recalled the words of golden-sceptred, blind, dead Tiresias. Though blind and dead, he sees, knows all. Amid the poplars and sterile willows, in the mist, he drank blood from the hollow and said, "Hapless Odysseus, you'll find peace only by seeking out men who know not and take your well-shaped oar for a swingle." Odysseus' heart now remembered and smiled. He spoke, "Land-bound man, this is a winged oar, not a swingle, but enough. Now I'll plant this wing in the firm dryness of the ground. All has an end. Long hated by a god, I floated, a leaf in angered winds." Again the land-bound man to Odysseus, "Who and whence are you? How did you come to us? You came not through the barren air like a long-necked swan, I know, but rather you came shifting your knees step by step. Speak, and tell me without twisting the truth." Two, the wing. Thus answered the well-travelled hero, "I'll tell the whole truth, without twisting. There are men, unknown to you, mortal, yes, like you, but like the gods celestial. They travel not by foot like oxen slow, and by an alternate shift of their knees, but, like birds, move with an aerial thrust of their arms. Beneath these men immense lies the colour of air. In my travels I saw, beneath my eyes, the stars bloom from the broken sky. The wain's driver follow me, whistle at his distant bulls, and I saw the golden wheels bounce gently on the twinkling gravel of the blue road. But we don't always thrust our wings between the two skies. Often we take in the wind. Amid sharp snarls we take the hollow, playful wind by its large nostrils and let it bear us on. With firm hands I hold the bridle and check its pace. Yet a god hates us, and the earth hates you, the earth that feeds but also breaks you, since all has an end. But now ask the king to send me a bull, a lamb, and a boar. Through them I'll honour, hear that god unknown." Puzzled, the other man answered again, "Great the unknown, greater when a god. But come to the king whose heart is lenient now, for the grain o'erflowed his baskets." Thus the divine hero planted his oar in a woody gorge. The oar's winged blade bore a weighty edge of crusted salt. He sacrificed to that god in anger about his cyclops with a bull, a lamb, and then a boar that mounts the sows. Then he went down and many moons rose above, to turn amidst the rough cliffs and to burn out, one after another. The last, a full moon, trembled above the glittering sea and showed him his ship. A small black ship against the white sand, and his mates waiting in silence looking at the mountains. And he sailed. Again he saw the wheels of the wain, golden, bounce on the gravel of the road sea blue. Again he saw the smoke go up. He saw his rough Ithaca and his high abode. There, next his hearth, he hung up the rudder. Three, the pilot cranes. And then a song came to him from on high, from above the clouds of wandering cranes. Hang the rudder by the fire and sleep. The Pleiades now flee Orion's arrow and have fallen into the sea. Now, O hero, prop up the black ship on the shore with rocks so it trembles not with the wind that is about to blow. O hero, open the scuppers, let the water run, lest it make the staves mouldy, for the rains are about to fall. Hang up the rudder by the fire. Keep dry the twisted cables, all the gear, every winged oar of the ship, and sleep. For now comes winter, comes the sharp cold which makes the beasts in the woods shiver, shaggy beasts who flee, tail to their belly. When on 3 feet, the line of the spine bent over with his grey head lowered, the old man goes about in the white snow, and the stray beggar comes to the smith into the open forge and dozes a little at the warmth amid the odour of bronze. Navigator of 100 skills, sleep in the high house, or, if more pleasing, sail now the earth, since you ploughed the wave. This was a song that gnawed at the heart of the helmsman, who turned the tiller towards landfall, weary of the water. For the cranes passed, crying to the men that the bad weather, winds, snows, rains had come, and the good Pleiades had disappeared. And through the clouds they, with firm heart, casting raucous cries at the squall, flew on. Their wings like oars beat the air. Four, the warring cranes. The wandering cranes from above the clouds told the pilot, sleep, told the ploughman, till. Tie the shaft of the plough to the yoke of the oxen. For in the barn they are well filled with grass, O son of Laertes. Make yourself, with the hide of a slaughtered ox, a pair of gaiters to shield the cold. But first you will stuff the inside with felt. Then sew together with the sinews of the ox, skins of the firstborn kids to protect your shoulders from the water. And on your head you'll place the head of an old wolf to warm you, and its teeth, white teeth, will gnash in sleet and wind. It is time to plough the field, not the sea, since the drove of the 7 stars no longer appears in the sky. 70 days after the sun has turned, when the driver of the wain will return, then soft is the breeze, calm the sea. Boötes shines at night. In the morning the swallow has returned, and chirping says, how calm is the sea, how soft the breeze. The breeze calls to itself the sail, the sea calls to itself the oar, and here remains the cuckoo singing to the ploughman. This was the song that stung the heart of him who had no ox, only the plough. In vain he says, lend me your 2 oxen. 'Tis time to till, and now each ploughman sows, then, happy and sure not to hunger, hears the winds whistle, the waters roar. And meanwhile, the cranes move towards the sea, intent to bring war, in long lines filling the sky with a clash of trumpets. Five, the fixed oar. And for 9 years he sat beside the hearth of his own house, the navigator hero, no longer forced by fate to wander by sea, to wander by land. His limbs, of course, with age, had slowly softened. Death would come for him out of the sea, but gently, gently, not by wounding him with its sweet arrows, but by breathing lightly on the torch that gales had often whipped, making it burn the brighter. And all around him a happy population, ruled by a son born far from war, with wisdom and in abundant peace. The white-tusked boars grew fatter in the faithful swineherd's pen. The broad-head oxen swelled the narrow pastures, and goats bedecked the slopes of Neraton, tearing the shaggy brush, the thorny scrub, while far below, beneath the tallest roof, lay gold, lay bronze, lay fragrant olive oil. Yet feasts were hosted seldom in that house. No merry din now filled the great dark halls, for the old man no longer craved the steak, no longer craved the fatty ham. He longed in vain to live on flowers, on the sweet lotus, whose eater is content and asks for nothing more than to graze on lotus blooms forever. Thus both the bard, who graces a feast with song, and the beggar, who defiles it with his rags, forgot the halls of the high house of Odysseus. Laertes' son now lived as if alone, out of the sea, like the old oar he had planted in dry earth, far from any salty breeze. That wing, crusted with salt, clutched by hard clods. And the grey-haired hero trembled as the flame murmured, just as that oar, in its lonely valley, shook when the cold wind from the mountains blew. Six, the spindle. Every year for 9 years he heard the cry of the wandering cranes. Plough, they said, and then sleep, alternating their battle cry as they stroked the air in long lines. While we row, you plough, churl. While you sleep, sailor, we'll spread our sails. This was the song biting his heart. The hero, lonely as a farmer without any oxen to pull his plough. He sat by the fire, and his old wife, hard-working Penelope, sat beside him quietly. And in the sooty maw of the fireplace, at the breath of the clammy winds, fixed sparks blazed. On the mucky bottoms of the black cauldron, sparks, waving gently, blazed. Engrossed by them, his eyes used to reading the skies, the old sea wanderer drifted off. And he made out in the limpid night the fugitive Pleiades, and the slow-turning ploughman, and the bear, also known as the chariot, which always turns around and is the seaman's one true friend. Brilliant Odysseus was giving sail to an even wind, holding the sheets while his brave sailors, tired out, laid their oars along the gunwales. The ships, with a shake of her sail, seemed to run all by herself through this thick-starred night. The rowers found sleep among the benches as the wind and the helmsman carried her. The hero lay covered on a rich pelt on the poop of the ship, and behind his head the sea shattered into a million pieces with long crashes and quick flashes of light. His gaze was fixed on the stars, but sweet sleep was weighing on his eyes, since all he could hear was the whistling of the wind in the sails and the rigging, and his wife leant against the wall, keeping her spindle whistling. Seven, the raft. His venerable wife then said to him, "Godlike Odysseus, it seems like today, the day I saw you again. I was sitting opposite you, here in my chair. You were tired of the sea, godlike Odysseus. You'd had your fill of blood. Like now, I saw you by the light of the fire. You didn't say a word. Your gaze was fixed on the ground before you." His gaze was fixed on the ground before him. He didn't say a word. He was listening to his heart yelping like a dreaming dog. Some leaves on one of the logs creaked, and all of a sudden the wind cried. But the hero heard his raft creak. the raft he'd built on that desert island. On the 18th dawn, he felt the raft rear up briskly in a shrill wind. A man all alone on a raft all alone on the sea, alone except for a few stray birds. And from where the dawn was breaking through, there now appeared a chain of clouds. Angry waves beat down on the raft, and the favouring wind went out of the sails. And then he heard a song, that man, the song that sings from the coils of seashells, and he knew that behind him, his enemy, Poseidon, fell god of the sea, was coming home to his sea-blue lands. The god saw him, and he laughed with a dry crack of thunder which echoed grimly. He was coming nearer. Odysseus heard waves slapping against his wheels and the neighing of seahorses, and foam from their mouths chewing the bit was flying up to the high sky, and the slanted whip of the storm slashed at their saddled serpentine backs. God and man were all alone on the sea, and the god was rising, his broad torso lifting clear of the waves. He shook his great head, and his bright trident shone through the mists, and the son of Laertes was talking to his heart, since there was no one else around, and his gaze was fixed on the tiller behind him. Eight, the swallows. For 9 years he awaited that death, which was supposed to come over him softly, far from the sea. And in the 10th year, at dawn, the swallows arrived from the sea. He was sleeping on his great carved bed, scooped from the stump of an olive tree, with roots in the ground, and he dreamt of sailors talking, scattered in the blue sea. He woke up, those faint voices still in his ears. He sat on the edge of his bed and listened. Swallows? The shadowy hall rang with their hubbub, and he threw a goatskin over his shoulders, lashed his stiff leather boots to his feet, and on his head a wolf bared its white teeth to the shadows. And he stood up from the bed slowly, just in case the slight shaking woke his wife. But she was held by a deep sleep, the sleep of the gods, a blissful sleep, sleep like death. He took the smoky ship's rudder down from above the fireplace, and he picked up his axe. But, always alert, he didn't make for the sea, not directly. Instead, he headed down a hillside bristling with oaks, down a steep little path, and few men he came across on that god-forsaken way. He told a bony herdsman that his axe was for a dried-out poplar, and he told a curly-haired maiden that the rudder was for a fence. So he spoke, the weaver of tricks, and the words he spoke were not without wings. Alone, at last, he changed his course, turned his sly face towards the salt sea. The oaks were scattering leaves at his feet, which crinkled with every step he took. The fig was sprouting, the blackthorn blossoming, the pear held its flowers in their pink buds, and from on high the shrill cuckoo counted the toing and froing of the waves. And already the hero felt under his feet the crunch no longer of leaves, but of sand. No more white blackthorns did he see, but white shells stuck in the reeds of the shore. And finally, he appeared at the blue sea, the wise old hero, carrying the rudder and an axe. And the restless sea, the sea without end, the thunderous sea, recognized him up there on top of the dune, with the unmeasurable laughter of 1,000,000 waves. Nine, the fisherman. But suddenly there was a swallow that saw him and turned away with a cry and then wheeled round. And now Odysseus scanned the whole grey coast searching for his beached ship. He didn't see it, but he saw an old man in rags on the beach, bent over the sand so he could dig it where the sea was rasping as it came and went. Odysseus went up to him and said, "Nothing, have we, fisher of sand? I have definitely seen from my black ship a man sitting on a pointy rock, holding a droopy line over the waves, but the long line, dragged down by the sinker, still delivers to a fish a curved bronze hook, and that snares them. And a smooth ring of cow horn stops them biting the line. And so, man, when hunger gnaws him, eats the fish, the sacred fish that devours raw flesh. I've also seen mortals casting nets from their curved ships, even as they glide over the fishy deep like coots or shadowy mergansers. And I've seen fish on the grey sand, writhing out of want of water, having been poured out of thick meshed nets. I've seen them die, flashing in the sun. But I have never seen anyone without a hook or a net catching this sort of wet quarry, old man. And I've never seen anyone making a meal out of such unpalatable sea snails, snails which carry around their own ship, or of crabs which carry around their own anvil." The beggar answered the old hero, "Sad is the beggar who at the banquet disdains the food a sceptred king throws to him, whether it's a bony shank or some fatty belly. Having it all, you see, has a grim result. Having nothing. I take whatever my great host gives. He gives it with his dark heart thundering, but he gives nonetheless. The sea gives, splendid and sonorous, an indifferent sea, it's true, but is man any less?" And now the old hero answered the beggar, "But doesn't rocky Ithaca have its good king with his stores of bronze and gold, who has stables stuffed with fattening pigs and goats and baskets loaded with fragrant bread? Doesn't that wise Odysseus rule here, who wandered for so long and suffered so much in his heart? He was a beggar and outcast too. Do you know, by chance, the whereabouts of the high-roofed house of glorious Odysseus, son of Laertes?" "10. The seashell. But the beggar did not turn his gaze from the changeable sea. He was holding a coiled shell to his curved ear as if he was listening. He answered the hero, 'Glorious Odysseus, son of Laertes, I know your house, but I am no whiny beggar. I was once a hero and a singer, my own master, my heart strewn with songs without end. I sang to you, godlike Odysseus, when your shadowy hall was full of corpses like fishes that the fisherman has left to die there flashing in the sun. I still see your slave girls, hours from death, wiping the blood with water and porous sponges. They sobbed and wailed. I sang for you, and you listened in silence, drinking your wine. But soon you tired of songs that were less than deeds done, and now I listen, alone, in silence. I threw my harp away. It was picked up by an old sailor with red eyes and fingers fit only for rigging. And now who plays the thing? Only the wind." The aged hero replied to the poet, "Phemius, old age has insulted us both, robbing us of the pleasures that we once enjoyed. Never did one of your new songs appear to me anything but new, newer each time and finer. But the deeds of Odysseus got old. Life that's already been lived is sleep. It's everything or nothing. I, at last awake in my fatherland, was like a man at dawn who's dreamed a dream that he can't quite remember, though it's sweet to linger on it. Now I want to plunge back into that sleep, so I might find that dream again in oblivion. You'll come with me. But tell me the truth. what song do you hear, and who sings it? Because I don't know anyone else on this stony island whose heart has been seeded with so many songs. And the aged poet to the aged hero, this from this, a humble shell, a long coiled shell, rough on the outside and blue inside and pure. No larger hero than one of our ears, and yet it has the whole sea inside, with its raucous storms and bashful calms, its cutting winds and babble of waters. A seashell, small, so that a small ear can hear but hear everything. That's the poet's craft, which for you got old. The hero answered with a smile. The sea, dear Phemius, is a little bit larger. "11. The Grounded Ship. The hero and the poet walked pensively along the shore of the sounding sea, and there, tucked inside the bay, a ship appeared, slender and black. They saw its stern, its long shadow cast on the sand by the setting sun, and over it, stridulous white seagulls floated between the sky and the sea. The keen eye of the hero saw that the pitch was fresh and the stones lay on one side, for the wind had abated and no longer shook the ship. He saw cowhide ropes on the side of the ship, hanging from the oarlocks. He saw the blades of the well-made oars jut from the high water mark of the stern. He secretly smiled. The ship was ready to sail, and he circled her like a charioteer circles his chariot before he yokes his 2 horses. He went up to the crimson prow, and his old companions were there, sitting on the sand, staring at the sea, listening to the cool springtime wind blow through their white beards. They sat on the beach like they used to, his old friends with their long oars. 10 years they had waited for him, in the fair weather and the spring morning. As the first birds came, their wives carried down to the ship casks brimming with flaming red wine, and goatskins full of crushed barley. Before the spring dawn could spread its roses all over the sky, the oarsmen would come to the beach, Odysseus's friends, with their oars on their shoulders, each his own. They sat on the sand under the cinnabar prow, red-eyed, counting the sea waves, feeling the wind in their beards, hearing the stridulous seagulls and far-off sailors sing on the sea. Each day, when the sun set in the sea and darkness prevailed, all would take their oars and return to their scattered homes as the roads quickly filled with shadows. "12. The Rudder. When the old hero appeared, they all stood up, their eyes fixed on him, as when oxen in the rough winter lie down, tied up before their manger, and slowly chew their humble meal while the rain comes whooshing down. As if a cowherd brings a bundle of fragrant hay, they slowly get up, their eyes fixed upon the hay. The old men rose too, but they were all far too shy to go near him. The hero then spoke from under the rough wolfskin on his head, and his words mixed with the crashing waves. Friends, hear what my heart has asked ever since I settled in Ithaca forever. Forever? My heart said no. I longed to return, yes, but not to end it all. As if oars could take roots in the woods and become the green firs they once were. Nor can the black ship cast again the round shadow of a pine tree. Nor does she miss the gnawing of woodworms, but loves the wave, the wind and the storm. I too want clouds, not the smoke of the hearth, the wild wind, not the whir of the spindle, not the idle fireplace snoring, but the sky and the sea that dazzles and sings. Friends, you see, I am like our sea, white on the edge but blue deep down. I don't know what I forsook when, like a fool, I hung my axe with ropes. In the seaside cave, shaded by laurels, in the soft fields of violet and celery, or where golden dogs were watching over the palace eternally, or where men turned into lions wagged their tails upon seeing us. I forgot where else, but I'll go back. I see that my deeds fade from my memory. As well you know, because you brought your crushed barley poured into goatskins and flaming red wine in sealed casks. One is our blood, the others our marrow. And you smeared the hull of the ship with pitch as a naked athlete oils his skin and carried the hawsers, which are like snakes sleeping in knots or hissing in the wind. You cleared off the stones, and you carried the light sails to the ship asleep, who dreams while she lies grounded. You brought your winged oars too. What else does she, this well-made ship, need, my dear friends? Let's sail it. Hold the wheel, my loyal friends. His words mixed with the murmur of waves. "13. Departure. And everyone's heart suddenly turned the blue color of the far horizon. They saw the shadow of the Cyclops. They heard the sorceress's song. The giant played his pipe as he grazed as many sheep as the waves in the sea. Circe sang as she wove a cloth as immortal and wide as the sea. They dragged the ship to the shore on rounded beams as if they were on wheels, and tied the mooring ropes to a lentisk that grew green on the pointy rock. The hero, already on board, made the tiller pass through the eye of the rudder. He stood on the stretcher, with the poet sat beside him. With a nod, he had the sailors climb aboard the ship and grip the oars. Then he cut the hawser with his axe. A cuckoo sang in the trees, a pruner sang in his vineyard. A flock of sheep crossed the beach with the incessant bleating of lambs. Women with curly hair chattered, rinsing their clothes in old washhouses. The morning smoke leaped high from the houses of stony Ithaca. The sailors, seated at their oarlocks, made the waves white with foam. And Phemius saw on a knot of twisted ropes his old melodious harp, the harp he had cast aside, which an old man with red eyes had gladly picked up and brought back to the ship. Everyone loved the silvery harp, as a child loves a dead swallow and caresses the bird's cold body with clumsy fingers and speaks to it, hoping it will wake and fly again. Phemius took his harp, gently plucked its strings, then played to the beat of the oars. That silvery voice reached their oblivious hearts and awoke songs from their past. Bent over their oars, they sang again with frail and hoarse voices. The swallow, open the light. It brings fair weather, it brings flowers. Its back is black, but its breast is white, and comes from someone with power. Open yourself, door, open yourself. Let peace and abundance come in, and wine will fill our kilderkin, and bread will fill our shelf. Give us one sesame loaf, hurry, for we are not here for the night. We stand barefoot at your doorstep, no longer old men, but young boys. "14. The beggar. They sang, and their song was childlike, of a time gone by, as they knew no other. In the hold where he lay asleep, Eros the beggar stretched his arms and rubbed his eyes with his fists. Nobody knew he was down there, like an enormous silkworm dozing inside a fuzzy, woolly cocoon. In the winter, he'd taken up the habit of sleeping in Odysseus' sleep, when the farmer kicked him out of the stable or if he feared the shepherd's dogs. In the warm summer, he slept under the star on the dewy grass where he could forget old age and hunger. The noise and the singing had woken him. His heart was pounding inside his chest. Do I not hear the sound of the silvery harp? Did I not dream that I'd carried a message to Penelope's suitors, but they were dead? And the harp echoed in the dark hall, and I heard these voices frail and hoarse. Indeed, he still heard that tinkling sound of a faint song through the crash of waves, faint as the griping of an army of frogs in a sun shower. He mumbled to himself, "Am I in a hall full of living men? Has anyone dragged me by the foot to the courtyard and broken my jaw right under my ear with his clenched fist, like the time divine Odysseus, disguised as a beggar, beat up the beggar Eros?" Eros quickly got up on his feet. His head was spinning. He reeled like a drunkard. He suddenly appeared before Odysseus and his sailors, paddling in the air. A dreadful sight. They stopped singing, raised up their oars from the water, and the ship reared like a wild horse. Eros lost his balance and fell on his back at the feet of Odysseus and Phemius. Everyone recognized the beggar Eros. When he got up and clutched their knees, kneeling before them, blood dripping down his chin from his nose and lips. Sweet laughter rose from the crew, long and loud. Eros understood. He saw Ithaca disappearing in the distance, its houses vanishing as smoke leaped up. He beat his thighs and began to weep. The old hero smiled and said to him, "Cheer up. Here you have room and board, barley and wine. Be our pantryman, and drink and sleep. Eros, no Eros."